Hey everyone, Denise here. So here's the tutorial from one of the 3 classes that we did in March 2024, and this one featured the bokeh technique. Now, it was a stencil that is not a bokeh stencil because I wanted to show you that you don't have to go out and spend lots of money on a bokeh stencil to do a bokeh card. I will tell you that, well, first of all, that's the stencil. I will tell you that I do have a legit bokeh stencil for cards, right? It's a layered stencil for this purpose with different size circles, but they all come like 6x6, and I don't make A2 size cards as a rule. This one is just because it was easier as a sample, but I don't make A2 size cards as a rule, so a 6x6 stencil doesn't help me. So I usually have to finagle it a little bit to make it work for me. Now, as that happens, if that's you, whether you make slimline or you make 5x7, you can still use a 6x6 stencil, obviously. You just need some washi tape and probably some Post-its and a little bit of patience and a little bit of care, and you're all set. So you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money on what is being labeled a bokeh set. If you have something with circles, different sizes, see them here, different size circles, you can use it for bokeh. If you don't have a stencil with different size circles, go ahead and make one. You have a Cricut, you have some stencil stuff, and not like the flimsy kind that comes off of me unless you're making a few of them to layer on each, and that's how you'd have to do it, because I know that the stencil vinyl I have, at least, once you pick it up, you can't put it back. So you'd have to cut a few of them and then just kind of adjust them and rotate them and things. But there are some disadvantages to this one that I'll talk about, but piece of cake, you can get a circle stencil anywhere. You don't want to buy a circle stencil? Okay, you have a circle punch, right? You have a Cricut, cut out some circles, different sizes. You have punches. We all have punches, right? From the age of the dinosaur. I didn't throw out my circle punches because why would I? They're circle punches. So different size punches, punch them on bigger squares of paper and use those as your stencil, right? That works too. What you need is a couple different inks. You need some kind of ink applicator, whether it's the foam, like the Tim Holtz foam, with the handle, or you use a blending brush, which is what I usually do, or whatever else you're using. Use a finger dauber if you want. Those work fine for this too. A sponge, yeah, whatever you have that works is going to be fine. So this is actually, and I do have 2 or 3 sets of these stencils. They were relatively inexpensive, so if anybody wants a set, just comment in the Facebook group and let me know, and I'll be happy to sell it for you for what we paid for it, because again, I'm not a store, so I'm not looking to make money on it. I had extras for people who committed to the class and then didn't come to the class, so I had to pre-buy the things. So I have extras, so if you'd like one, if you see the video, just message me in the Facebook group and let me know, and then I'll tell you how much it was, which again, cheap. So this is the stencil. It is a layered stencil. It is not a layering stencil. It is not meant to build on the one behind and like add the one prior and add accent colors or create like a Pink Fresh Studios layering stencil to color things. That's not what this is. So this has 3 different stencils to it, and if you look at it, you can see it's not a layering stencil. It has layers. It's not a layering stencil. So for this one, I just did the green first. Then I actually did the pink, and I should have done the pink darker, but I didn't. And then I did the stripes, and that's it. Put them there, right? And then you've got this, and you like this. You want to do this. Listen, do it on a diagonal if you want. Nothing says that it has to be straight on. There is no rule here. Right? Same with this. You don't like the stripes sideways? Do them this way. You want them diagonal? Great, do it that way. Doesn't matter. It's your card. So this is it's actually slightly smaller than 6x6. I want to say it's almost 5x5 maybe. Well, let's see. This is 5.5 this way, right? Oh, so it is 6x6. Okay. But it's not the whole stencil. So the inside of the stencil is probably about 5.5. It works for some. My slimlines are usually 4x9. A 5x7 card, the whole card, that's going to be a little tricky for me. But I just make a layer, that's all. So all I did was this, okay, so if you did the class, if you paid for the class, this is an A2 size base, so cut one of your white sheets of paper to 5.5 by 8.5 and score the 8.5 inch side at 4.25. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a minute. At 4.25, and then you've got the small card. You have 2, I think, maybe 3 pieces of black in your kit. So I want you to turn them, and I want you to take one of them and cut one into 2 5.5 by 8.5 size pieces. Okay. Now I want you to take one of those halves, and I know you can't see it on here because it's a black tablecloth. I want you to cut a 4.25 by 5.5 black piece. And I want you to adhere that directly to the card base, the white card base you just cut. That way your pieces are out of the way, you know where they are, you're not cutting anything by mistake, you're not losing them like I do all the time. And your white piece, now cut a white piece. Your white piece is 4 by 5.5, I'm sorry, 5.25 inches. 4 inches by 5.25 inches. So it's just slightly smaller than the black. Don't glue that. Don't glue it yet. You're going to take a piece of paper, whether it's a mat or whatever you have. Maybe you have one of those waffle flower mats or some kind of stencil mat, whatever you're using. Go ahead and stick this down, and one at a time do it. I actually did it again in the circles, then the dots, then the stripes. It doesn't make a difference. I used Distress ink. I used Twisted Citron for the green. I used Pick Raspberry for the dots, right? The Twisted Citron is the solid circle. Picked Raspberry are the dots. And I used Peacock Feathers for the stripes. And you just layer that up to the point where you like it, and it makes a great background for you, and you're good. You want to jazz it up a little bit, find one of these again, put some lunar paste on it. Put any kind of paste on it that's like that. Put some texture paste on it if you really feel the need. Or mix up some texture paste with, some Lindy's Magicals. Make it a whole new color. Layer that stuff on. Now, the stencil I used is a little delicate with the stripes, but it would be fine for the circles. It would be fine for the dots. But it's a stencil. You can do anything with it. It's a quick and easy card. You can make lots of these this way. And then I just cut this out. Now, when I cut this out at home, you can't see it here, but I would usually, underneath here, I would cut it out in the middle of the card, because you're not going to see this. It's going on the card base. So rather than waste another piece of black paper, I just cut it right out of the black, and then I put it on the card. But you're home, so you don't have that option. If you have the kit, I may have already done that if I cut it out for you like that. Okay, so that's that. You have boom, you're done. That's that card. So then we have these, and these two are the same card. This one and this one. And I don't use anything but the round circles. This one is what we're using from now on. So these two are essentially the same card. I color blocked this one, and I random colored that one. Those are the only differences, and their size. So here's the next thing I want you to do. I want you to cut out of one of your sheets of white a 5x7 card base. So I want you to cut your paper down to 10 inches by 7 inches. And I want you to score the 10-inch side at 5 inches. And then fold it, and that gives you a 5x7 card. Then I want you to take the other piece of black that you just cut. Remember, you cut that before, you cut 2 pieces. So I want you to take that other piece, it should be about 5.5 by 8.5, and I want you to cut it down to 5x7. Now again, if you're cutting out, if you're playing at home with your own color inks and you have whatever, so get your sentiment, cut it out, do it right in the middle of the black, because nobody's going to see it. It's completely covered. And nobody's going to see the back of your card because you have a card base. I don't, because this is my sample with my directions. So once you have that 5x7 black cut, glue it right on down to that 5x7 card base. Now this is I want to say it's a spellbinder. I think it's if I remember right, it's called cascading butterflies. They may or may not still have it. I use it all the time. And this is a Tim Holtz die. And it was perfect in black as a silhouette for this. Notice though, again, most card makers make A2 size cards, the little ones. Might see how much smaller that is. Sometimes because they're easier, sometimes it uses less paper, sometimes because it's just less real estate to fill, and sometimes people are afraid to, how am I going to fill all this card? Yeah, I don't like the small cards. I make them when I have to, but as a rule, I'd rather make a bigger card. Okay, so you have that done, right? So now I want you to take another of your white sheets. And if you have a smaller white sheet, that's okay. You can pull that. And I want you to cut the white to 4.5 by 6.5. 4.5 by 6.5. Now I want to set up the other card at the same time because since it's the same technique, you're just going to move from one to the other. So this one then, I want you to take one of your white sheets of paper and I want you to cut a full slimline size. So the card folded is 9 by 4, so you're cutting your paper 9 inches by 8 inches. So if your paper is 8.5 by 11, then cut 9 inches, cut to 9 inches on the 11-inch side, and the 8.5 inch side, you just cut off a 1/2 inch. So 9 inches by 8 inches, and score the 8-inch side at 4. Okay? Then I want you to take your black. Now, if you are doing this with me in class, or I may have done this for you, this is going to be cut out of the bag. Because again, you don't see it. And why am I using a whole nother sheet? This is a huge die. Why am I using a whole nother sheet of paper? I'm not. So nobody's going to see it. Conserve your paper. I mean, we all have a lot of paper, right? You don't have to hoard the paper, as I say, as a paper hoarder. But, use it to your advantage. So this one then, you're going to take another black sheet of paper. And this time, you're going to cut it the other way. Now, you're going to take the paper. Now listen to me before you cut it, right? You are going to cut it down the middle, but long ways. So the 11-inch side is going to be top to bottom on your trimmer. So you are cutting it into 2 4.25 by 11 sheets. Because you see how this is a skinny triangle, right? See, so it's going to look more, well, not with color. It's going to look more like this, but in black, right? So you're not cutting it this way. You're cutting it this way, okay? So when you're done, you'll have 2 4.25 by 11 sheets. Again, the black, one of the black sheets. You're going to take one of those pieces, the black, and you're going to cut it down to 9 inches by 4 inches. 9 inches by 4 inches. And again, if you're cutting out a sentiment before, in black, before you glue the black down, cut out your sentiment from the middle. Remember, this piece, your white piece, is 8.5 by 3.5. So as long as you are within, say, 8 by 3, you're good. You're never going to see it. So just center it. If you think it's too large or you're not sure, then go ahead and use that other piece of black paper because you don't want to have to start again. But if you know it fits, then just do it that way. So once you have whatever you're cutting, if you're cutting from the black sheet here, I want you to attach the black directly to your slimline card. So directly to the 9 by 4 folded card. And then take one of your sheets of white. Now you may have this already in your kit. You may have a longer piece like this. And if you do, that's what you're using. Right? You don't want to cut all of your full size white cardstock because a lot of that is for card bases. So remember in March we had 3 classes. We had 3 cards per class, 3 classes. So we had 9 cards. So you need 9 card bases. So 9 full sheets of white for all 3 of the classes. For this one, obviously just 3 sheets. But you did have some extra white in there that I put for things like this. So if you have something shaped sort of like this within the envelope, the little folder that all of these were in, then that's what you're using. If not, cut another piece. Just grab a piece of white. And you're going to cut it down to 8.5 by 3.5. So what you should have at this point then is these two cards, just the black, and then your white paper and your white paper. Move your card bases to the side. Okay? And if you cut sentiments, you have those two, move them to the side. This is really easy. So with this one, what I did was I color blocked. Now I did one that I'm going to go through with you, and then I did this one already when I demoed in the class. So by color block, I mean I did picked raspberry, and then I did peacock feathers and twisted citron. I did not use oxides, by the way. I did not use oxides for this. Does it work with oxides? I have to think that it does, but the demo I saw just used regular ink, so I did not want to try oxides. I didn't know if the white pigment ink, because you need a white pigment ink pad, I didn't know if the white pigment ink would be too blendy with the oxides, because you know they're creamy looking. So I didn't want to try it this time for class, but we'll try it next time. And I know this looks kind of like a hot mess, but I was really going over it with a blending brush. You can see where I didn't really care or take care. I was just kind of demoing the technique. This one, right, looks much better. Same here. Looks much better. So take your picked raspberry, and I did it in this order because this was the dye I was using, and this looked more like sunrise sunset than these colors, which looked more like towards brown. So that's why I did them in this order. You use whatever inks you want. You use whatever colors you want. Make sure that where they meet, though, that they're going to blend into something nice and not mud. So picked raspberry. I did it, I don't know, a good portion of the... Now, you're blocking, I should say, on your 5x7. This is not a 5x7, obviously, but this is what I use to demo, okay? So when you do this, it's, I don't know, maybe if I look here, it's like, the pink is maybe like 2 inches down. See, like my thumb to where my little fat hand is, right? It's about 2 inches down. And then the twisted citron is about the same. So do that, right? Do it. Just, do it until it looks right to you. And then I always do the bottom next, and then I do the middle. One, because it's just easier to do it in the middle because I'm going to blend up and I'm going to blend down. But also it's the darker color, so I'm not going to get the lighter color on my brush and then, go back in and ruin my lighter ink pad. So I always do the darker one last, because when I go back in the blue after I've gone over the pink it's not going to ruin the blue pad. But if I go into the blue and then go into the twisted citron, I could corrupt my pad. So let's do it. Do the blue. And again, I have a blending video over on the LI Craft Stop website from way back when. So head on over there if you don't know how to ink blend or you need a refresher, and you can watch those, and it'll show you how to ink blend and give you a tutorial on that. So when you blend the peacock feathers with the picked raspberry, you're going to get sort of a purpley. And the twisted citron with the peacock feathers, kind of a green. See that green right there, right? So make sure that when you do pick colors, that it is something that's going to make, another pretty color to blend through, and not just, brown, which I'm famous for, by the way. So that. So once you've color blocked, what I recommend you do is you go back over it again, smooth it out. It's okay if you see some white, because look, you're not going to notice. So you're going to color block again. And we're going to wait to do the bokeh until after you've done this one. This one is not color blocked. As you see here, I've done some pink, some pink, some pink. Now this is going to be on your slimline one, so this is actually the one that you would do it on. And then I put blue where I wanted, and then I put the green where I wanted, and then I went back in and I did it again, and it looks like nothing, right? But here's the thing. Neither did these other cards. I actually lost it. Here we go. Neither did these other cards. But that's not your focus, because the bokeh is kind of like an out of focus camera. Think of it like, you know those pretty pictures that you see and the camera's sort of out of focus except for the one, but it's not really like a portrait mode, and maybe it's like a little rainy or spritzy or something. You can't even see where the imperfections are. And I have a bunch, trust me. You can't even see them because your eye isn't drawn to them. So once you, and I would do a better job than this if I was doing it for real, but I'm not. So you're going to want to take now your dye. Now, if you took the class, you have this dye. If you didn't take the class, you use whatever, as we talked about earlier. I'm going to do this on the black just so you can see, because if I do it on the paper, I don't think you'll see it. And you're not going to see the white. Just a heads up. You're not going to see the white. I actually am going to do it on the paper. I changed my mind. Look at that. It's like all the colors of Easter, right? It's so pretty. Okay, so now Post-its are over here, so let me grab them. So if you're using this stencil, you want to grab some washi tape. If you're not using a stick mat like for stencils, you're going to want to grab some washi tape. Tape down your paper down here, or where you're not using it yet. Tape down your stencil where you're not using it. If you are using this stencil, please notice. See how those circles have some flat areas? I don't want that. I don't want it to seem like it ended. So especially here where it's going to end it, nope. So I'm going to put this out a little bit. Let me try it on here first. Put that out a little bit so you can't see it, and then I'm going to washi it down. But what I'm going to do, so here, it's okay if I do it like this because I'm not going to see the harshness of the ending, but I am going to see it there. So I'm going to take a Post-it. I'll put it right over there. Here's another one. I'm going to take a Post-it. Put it right over. Because I don't want the harsh line, and I have to move this stencil down because the stencil isn't big enough for what I need. So put that there. Put that there. Again, I'm going to grab some tape. I think this is Kathy's. Kathy, I think you left your washi tape here. So I am not going to put the harsh line here. I mean, I could here, but I don't want it there. So I'm just going to do it off the page because, quite frankly, I feel better about it. And it doesn't matter to me if it's crooked or not because they're circles. And also, it's not going to matter because I'm going to layer this several times. It's not just one time that you go over this. It is a, oh, no, I don't want to put it there. That's over the paper. It is a bunch of times. Now, if I dry it, and I might just hit this with a little heat gun. I mean, not a super hot heat gun, but I might hit it with a little heat gun just to make sure, you know, it's kind of dry and I feel like I'm not smudgy. All right, so I'm going to take a brush. And I'm going to find my, here we go. I'm going to use some white pigment ink. Doesn't matter what brand you use. It just needs to be white pigment ink. Okay, I'm going to grab a drink. It's a lot of talking. This is my third video of the day. All right, so always save these little inside pieces if you don't already know, because it'll save your pad. Take your whatever tool, and you see that ink does come off. It's distressed, right? So it's going to come off. So you're going to take whatever inking tool you're using, whether it's a foam thingy, which I have right over here. Ooh, we thought that this would be so difficult. All right. I don't necessarily suggest the ones with the dome. The flat ones I think would be better. And these brushes are also domed, right? So it might be better, like less of a harsh line, although I did not get a harsh line when I actually sit down and did it the right way. So you're going to ink up. You know how to do this. You're going to ink up. You start light. Go over the circles. Don't press hard. Start light. I don't see anything. I know you don't see anything, and I know you think you don't see anything, but trust me, it's white pigment ink. It's showing up. And I'll tell you how you know. I want you to look, oh, this is taped down. I All right, so you see this right here, it's not that creamy, and all of a sudden this looks creamy. I don't think you can see that very well. Take a look at this. So you see how bright it is? See how it's not anymore? See how it's not anymore? It's a little dull. That's the white. You don't want to go hard. Your next layer, you want to go hard and heavy on it, but not this layer, because you need something in the background. You need those lighter things. And you see how many times these circles are overlapped? That's how you do it. So you're just going to do this, right? You're going to get all of them. Now, and you would work your way down the card. So now I would have to, oh, see, my tape is sticking. So now I would have to change it. Oh, see, so you can see this a little bit, right? You see how those circles are starting? And I will tell you that the longer you let it sit, because it dries, the darker it looks. So keep it in mind. But you see, now I have these harsh ones up here. So I have some choices here. I still have these harsh ones here though. So I'm gonna have to not use those, right? And I'm gonna have to, I don't really wanna put my washi on my card if I don't have to. And here is kind of where that ended. So I'm gonna put this over here. Right, I'm just gonna leave it here. Now I would, on mine, if I had these harsh lines down here again, I would definitely cover it with a Post-it. I'm not going down that far. I am gonna cover this with a Post-it though, because that's that half circle. Nothing else here in my color is an issue. So let's take a look at this one then, because this one is nice and bright. And I use a brush, right? So I have a brush. I'm just off camera inking up. See how that changed to creamy looking? Now, with something that's not flat, you do run that risk of these harsh edges there like that. So you really don't want that. And I already see that I have one there from that. So you want to take your time, you know, and just kind of do it. And you want to go light. Okay, so now you have that done, right? You have your first layer. You can start to see the circles, right? So go ahead and turn this, because you do want it to overlap. Go ahead and turn it. You gotta cover this one. You may have to wipe off the stencil a little bit. Remember, this is Distress ink, so if you're wiping off the stencil with any kind of water and not just a dry paper towel, that you don't want to put it back on till it's dry, because your Distress ink will react to the water, and then you'll have a whole different kind of look to your card, which may be really nice, but is not what we're going for here. So just fair warning about that. Let me just put a piece of tape down there. All right, so now I'm going in hard. I'm gonna go heavier. As if you tell, will tell you I have a very heavy hand. I'm gonna like press. You see my fingers, like I'm pressing. And now I'm gonna press harder, because I want this layer to be darker. I want my first layer that I did to be white. Careful not to touch your card when you do this. Or you're not as short as me, maybe you can get it done. But I want this hard. My first layer that I do has to be lighter because it's in the background. The second layer that I do has to be darker because I want it in the forefront. And it's okay if it overlaps some of the lighter circles that you did the first time around. Mine do. Where's my card? See how mine do there? And they do here also. And every time you do this, it's going to look different. The inks that you use can make a difference, and it will, oops, so you don't want that in a stencil, and it will look different. So you see what I mean about the harsh lines there? Now, you can certainly try to blend that out, as long as you stay within the circle, see, like that, because it's wet, so that blended out. I have a little brush here. And remember, it's supposed to be a little blurry anyway, but you see how that changed completely? And it will change even more as it dries. And this may not look like anything but a hot mess to you now, but you put a dye over it. Look how pretty that is. This turned out so nice, I didn't even want to put a sentiment on it. But I did, because then it was sort of more masculine-y for a card, and those for me are hard to make. So that right there is how you do this. And again, once it dries, it does look different. I sometimes heat set in between, and again, I use that Tim Holtz Ranger one, you know, like with the big surface, you know, it almost looks like a little mini hair dryer. I don't use my heat gun because I don't necessarily want concentrated heat. I don't want my paper to bend or anything. I'm just looking to sort of dry it in between. I would not dab it with a paper towel because I don't want to take the ink off. So as I sit and wait for this, I would hit it with the gun and I would move on to the next one. And then I would go back to this one if I felt it needed more. And because it's ink, it is sort of waiting and seeing what it needs, what it looks like, how different it is. The key here is the layers. Start very light and then go back, move your stencil around and go heavier. You are blending, and how dark you blended or you inked to begin with will also make a difference. I did not do it very dark there. I did it much darker here. But again, if you put something over that, and once this dries without those harsh lines, it looks just like this. So go ahead and practice on some paper. Now, if you're afraid to try it on this because you don't know, then go get some practice white cardstock, little pieces, right? And if you're using a stencil like this, cut a 6x6 piece, or cut an A2 size piece, which may be a little too small for these stencils, but go ahead and cut some paper, ink it up, and try it. Practice it a few times before you use it on your card if you're a little uncomfortable. I promise you, this is gonna look great for you. I was shocked that it worked for me, to be honest. And I know, again, this really doesn't look like much, and I said the same thing when I did this, and when I came back the next morning, oh, all right, that looks pretty good. And again, this next morning, like, oh, and when I put the dyes on it, like, oh, that looks really nice. Like, this is great, but it changes everything. I hope that this was helpful. Go ahead and practice. And if you make some, please be sure that you post them on the Facebook page so we can all ooh and ah over your great work. If this video was helpful to you or you learned something, please go ahead and hit the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you can see when more classes pop up. I hope to add scrapbook layouts soon. Play along at home. Again, use whatever inks you have at home. The only thing that you do really need for sure is a white pigment ink pad. That's the one thing that this requires. Everything else you can use from your stash at home, but if you don't have that, you do need that. That's not something you can substitute. So again, I hope to see you at a card class soon if you're local to us here on Long Island, and if not, I hope to see you online. Bye, everyone.